Are you ready for the great reveal? Good. You know, I'm waiting for the day when you all just say no, and I just pack it up and we'll all go to lunch, right? Okay, so have you ever said something you really regretted? And I think all of us, we do this. It's I guess the instant nature of social media and Twitter and things like this allow us to sometimes let our mouths or even maybe our fingers, our keyboards respond a little too quickly, right? Before we've even thought the words through. We respond. And sometimes I think that it's I guess we're going so quickly today that our brain comes out of our fingers, not even realizing what we're saying. So I asked you to post a bit to that number this morning for those of you that got here early enough and saw it, to post some of these moments. If you've had these awkward times when you said something, it just came out so quickly, and then upon reflection, you thought about it and said, whoa, I really shouldn't have said that. So let's see what you said. Okay. Did you ever mix up certain sayings? For example, when someone says, thank you, you could either say no problem or you're welcome. Well, my boss on the first week of the job said thank you for something I had done, and my response was a combination of the two. Your problem. I like that. Yep, I told my boss that it was his problem for the work I had done. Hashtag awkward. I like that. Let's see, what else do we get today? As if by magic. I once ended a voicemail by saying amen instead of goodbye. Have you done that? That's a pretty good. If you're going to have a faux pas, that's a good one. What else? I told a less than appropriate story. Oh, yes. Okay, moving right along. That's a gag on me. That's inside politics right there. Okay. I asked to come. Who posted that? Where are they? Are they here? Okay. So I asked a customer once, I had them seated across from my desk, do you smell smoke? Thinking smoke must be coming into my place of business from an outside source. The customer said, yeah, that's me. I'm a smoker. Ooh, that's a tough one. Are you going to wear that? How many have said it? Come on, fess up. Okay. Asked a woman when she was due. She said, 2 years ago. Oh, okay. Awkward moment, calling a teacher mom. And I think one more. Waiter, enjoy your meal. Me, you too. Okay. Well, we do sometimes blurt a few things out without a lot of thought going into them. And luckily, we have God's Word helping us to figure out better ways to communicate. And such is the case in the book of James today, which is the lectionary passage. I want to read to you out of the 3rd chapter of James. I'm going to encourage you to read the whole chapter, the whole 3rd chapter. We're going to talk about parts of it. Not going to read it all to you this morning, just verses 1 through 5. So you can read along on the screens. You can read your own translation, or just listen. Here we go. Not many of you should become teachers, my brothers and sisters, for you know that we who teach will be judged with greater strictness. For all of us make many mistakes. Anyone who makes no mistakes in speaking is perfect, able to keep the whole body in check with a bridle. If we put bits into the mouths of horses to make them obey us, we guide their whole bodies. Or look at the ships, though they are so large that it takes strong winds to drive them, yet they are guided by a very small rudder, wherever the will of the pilot directs. So also the tongue is a small member, yet it boasts of great exploits. I'm going to read one more verse here. How great a forest is set ablaze by a small fire. May God bless the reading and the hearing of God's holy word. One of James's primary concerns is the use of words. In the early church, you have folks gathering together. It's a volatile time. It's sort of important what you say and to who you say it, to whom you say it to, because there can be consequences. I think James could have said that today. Think about it, right? You have to be careful what you say and who you say it to, or what you do. I think about exploits of like road rage and things. I was over on just over here across from 46 on a little back road, and I'm headed home, and I'm about to turn on Oregon. I think some of you live near there. About to turn on left on Oregon. So I'm stopped, and there's a guy in front of me, and waiting for traffic, and I'm just sitting there waiting, and I noticed that no one's coming, yet the guy's not turning, right? So I'm being, a pastor, patient, and so I wait and I wait. And way, way down, blocks and blocks and blocks down, I see a car approaching. And so I say, okay, it's just one of those very careful drivers, right? Going to wait till this. And he wants a long stretch of free space before he turns left. So I wait and wait and wait. And this car comes and goes by. Guy still doesn't turn. At that point, I don't know what I'm thinking. Maybe the guy's texting. Who knows what he's doing. So I'd been very, very patient. So I so politely beep my horn with two little beeps, right? Beep, beep. The guy explodes. He explodes. He sticks his head out of the window. His arms are flailing, and I'm not going to tell you what he said. But I could read his lips, right? So he's going off. So it just amazing. You never know what response you're going to get when you say something or act in such a way. And I think that's what James is talking about. They're living in a tough time. He says, the tongue is a fire, verse 6, that is set on fire by hell. The wrong word said in the wrong situation can create an uncontrollable blaze that will consume a community and cause irreparable harm. How profound are those words even today? Now, as a pastor, I did wait before I beeped. I try to be a little more, insightful about my actions. People know me. Some of you know my car. I have to be careful. So pastors and teachers, we have to watch, right? We have to watch. People are watching us. And if we live by faith, here's the hard word. If we live by faith, if you live by faith, you're a teacher. That was sort of the point of last week's message, where our faith is a testimony on display. So people watch us, we teach, and how we act and what we say. So today I want to talk a little bit about what we see going on in the culture, in our country. It's this idea of anger on public display. As a matter of fact, we were our men's group, our Tuesday 6:30 men's group. We meet every Tuesday, and we have discussions. So we were putting together a list of things that we wanted to look at for the fall, and one of them was this idea of anger on display. Why is everybody so mad? What's really going on? Are we really angrier, or just more visible in our anger, or more audible in our anger with these angry displays? Those are some of the questions we were kind of tossing around. And I think maybe we've just become a little too comfortable in our harsher, even, I guess, uglier criticisms. It's like, see if you feel this way. It's like our opinions have become weaponized, right? They're tools to inflict some kind of payback. Or maybe it's just we do these over-the-top demonstrations making our point because basically we don't think anybody's listening to us. Right? You have to do something to get, like the guy flailing outside the car window. He had to do something to make sure I was paying attention to him. So why can't things be better? That's what we were wondering in the men's group. Why can't we be more kind? Why can't we be more compassionate, more gentle, more civil? Theologically, we're in the church. We're going to talk a little bit of theology. The loss of civility has been going on a long, long time. We think it's just happened in the past couple of years. It had. It's been going on since the very beginning of creation. In fact, it happened right following creation and continues today. So when we look at somebody acting crazy and we point at them and go, wow, look at that terrible, terrible expression and that anger and that hatred. Look at all of that. When we look at somebody and we say, look at them, we have to say, we are them. Because none of us, we prayed our prayer of confession saying we're all broken and we need God's grace. So we don't get out of this deal just because we're coming to church or we call ourselves a Christian that somehow we're set aside as better than, or these words don't apply to us that James is offering today. So I wanted to break this down into two main issues and then three things you can do about it. First, the two issues: thoughts versus feelings. And we've done some of this before in messages here at the church. But thoughts and feelings, they both have positive aspects and they have some that aren't so positive. In fact, they're a bit negative. Now, I think thoughts can be really good. And when I think about somebody who needed good thoughts and actually benefited from them, they made a movie about it. First, it was a book. You know what it is? Who needs happy thoughts? Come on, you guys are well-read. Peter Pan, right? Peter Pan needs happy thoughts. Yes, Heidi, it's true. Peter Pan needs happy thoughts to fly, right? But thoughts can also take you from highs to lows. It can bring you down if they're focused too often on the negative. And the more we dwell on those ideas of negative ideas, the greater the downward spiral into a very dark place. And when we get there, it hinders our perspective. It hinders our ability to see what's really going on. And God did not design our thoughts to work in such a way. God didn't make our brains to process and come out with that result. We were made differently. So that's thoughts. Feelings, on the other hand, the ability to feel and to express emotions is such a wonderful gift from God. Early on, Elisa will tell you, I was raised where you kind of hold your feelings in. You don't express a lot of that, but you have a family and things change and you grow. And I've come to embrace feelings are wonderful. Emotions are wonderful. They're a gift from God. And Jesus had both, didn't he? He would cry tears, but he also was moved to love all kinds of folks that some people would never love. However, here's the point. This is the part to underline. Feelings are not always being generated by truth or reality. We can trick ourselves. We can have feelings about anything. It doesn't have to be real. But we can have the feelings. And if our thoughts focus on the negative aspects of life, be they real or just imagined, our interactions with people will follow suit. I saw a report recently about the placebo effect. You understand the placebo effect? You can take something, they'll tell you this will help you even if it won't, and most people will say they feel a little better. Well, I just saw some research. They've actually researched the negative placebo effect. The same thing happens in reverse. If you can feel good because they say, here, eat this pill, take this pill, you're going to feel great. They can also say, here, this pill will make you feel terrible. Guess what people report, even if it's a sugar pill? They feel terrible. It's the negative placebo effect. The more we think on the negative, the more we feel bad. We feel angry, maybe so angry that we reflexively speak these negative feelings into words. So instead, James gives us a little bit of a clue here. He says we need to pay attention to the source of our words. It's almost like he references a little bit later a spring. If a spring is coming from deep in the ground and it's pure water springing up, that's lovely. But those things, if they're deep in the ground and they're pure, it should not be generating liquid that tastes nasty. We pay attention to what's going on deep inside. so that what comes out is good. So when our speech gets out of control, and maybe you would say today it's out of control, maybe we just see it more because it's the media and all of those kinds of things. But it has the potential, James is saying, this can mess with God's creation. James is referring back to that creation story. He says, no human being has been able to tame the tongue because it's like trying to tame a venomous snake with a forked tongue. And he gives that example. Out of the same mouth, we can bless the Lord over here, but then turn around and curse another human being that's made in God's image. That's verse 9. We didn't get that far. You can read that later. He goes on to say, like mindless reptiles, we tend to be driven by fight or flight. That means we speak or maybe we tweet without thinking about the implications of our words. They're happening with others. He's talking about what I call knee-jerk reactions. Now, if you go to the doctor, and I should have gone to John Schaefer, who's here today, and I should have asked John Schaefer to bring me a reflex hammer, because is this a reflex hammer, John? Now I have to tell the truth to everybody. I could have fooled them all. This is called a ball-peen hammer. But doctors have this thing called a reflex hammer, and it has, I think we had a little image of it. There you go. It's the little rubber thing, and if you hit just right, I did this morning with the children's message. I had them up here, and I actually tested, and it was neat to see them kind of do that reflex reaction. What's happening there is that it measures the deep tendon reflexes. One little hit can cause your tendons to fire, and it produces the famous, leg kick. And you can try not to do it. I mean, you can think real hard, I'm not going to do it, I'm not going to do it. But we have almost no control over this. That's why it's a reflex. One hit, bang, there goes your leg, and you're a rockette, right? Whew. True story, right, John? Thank you. Here's what I think the Bible's saying about this anger speak going on in the culture today. When we speak words of negativity and anger, there's a very good possibility that it's a reflexive reaction that's revealing a bit of our jerky nature, right? Our brokenness, our sinfulness, where we can actually become jerky toward another person. And yes, you can say jerk in church. I just did. We don't really need help doing this, do we? It's reflexive. We can be held captive by our own negative thoughts, and that leads us to do and to say things that really hurt people. It brings out the jerk in us, but we don't have to. We can say no. That's what James is talking about. We do have some control over this. It's not just like the knee thing where it's automatic. Jesus and God's word to us in this passage in James talks about a third way. We talked about thinking, we talked about feelings, right? James talks about a third way, a better way, a third influence that mediates our thoughts and our feelings. It's what I call our heart's spirit. And you go, okay, he's making stuff up now, right? He's making it up because I didn't hear him read that in the passage. What is your heart spirit? Well, it's in the Bible. It's all through the Bible. It goes by several different names. I just gave it that name today because I think it'll help us grab hold of the message. Thoughts are produced in our mind. We all know this. These thoughts then trigger our brain to release electro and chemical stimulus, right? Generates the stuff of which feelings are made. There are people, I've got a good friend of mine, they adopted a son, and actually he's in the hospital right now. He was born with a very rare disease. He can't feel pain. Can't feel it. So there's something with his brain that's not allowing the signals to go through. So it's pretty clear pain has to do with this signaling. So our brain can give off these chemicals that, boom, trigger us into all kinds of responses. But we're not just thoughts and feelings. We're also spirit. In the beginning, God created us, breathed into us the Ruach of God, the Spirit of God. That's what makes us alive. And the way I think about that Spirit of God is if there's a clarifier between our emotional selves, our feelings, and the deeper feelings in our heart. That's the third voice of the heart spirit, I called it. It's the truth purifier, helping us to resist the knee-jerk reactions that we can have, responses of negativity. Instead, it can act as like a faith filter through which our words can be tempered in the presence of that spirit. Now, I'm just like you. You can hurt me the same way I can hurt you. I can think about things that go on, and I can reason them through and still come out with hurt feelings. Sometimes they translate into a little bit of anger. These are the human works of my thoughts that trigger feelings. However, there have been times when I have triggered off reflexively into anger, and I say something. And I say something that seems to make sense at the time. Maybe I'm really mad, and it pops out like some of the things you guys listed on the screen this morning. But I can say those things, and it's sometimes even while I'm speaking them, I hear a third voice. It's not my thoughts. It's not my feelings. It's something else. Something else tells me while I'm speaking, boy, that's not very good. Gosh, you shouldn't have said that. That was really hurtful. It's not good for you to say that either. How many of you have ever acted like that in a way where maybe it's through social media, maybe it's just to somebody where you had a head of steam up. You were ticked off and you let it fly. And either then or right after, upon reflection, you felt your heart speaking now. That's the third voice saying, wow, those words were really not very good. That's your heart spirit. That's the Spirit of God speaking to you. It speaks to all of us if we listen. So how do you tune into that? Okay, there's two problems. There's thoughts and there's feelings. And I said there are three ways to deal with this if we want to get in touch with the Spirit of God, what I call the heart spirit. So there's a fellow, he's a professor at Baylor University. He wrote a survival guide for a world at odds. So he's looking at what's going on in the world and say, here's a survival guide. The guy's name is Alan Jacobs. So he wants to offer advice to how to repair this disconnect between thoughts, feelings, what I would call the heart spirit. He says that we all need to relearn how we think before we engage how to speak. He gives three ways to do that, and that's how we're going to close today. First, if you have a beef with somebody, the title of the sermon is Jerky Beefs. So you had a beef with somebody, he says, slow down. Just take a breath. And James says this right in the scripture. He says it early on in the first chapter, verse 19. Let everyone be quick to listen, slow to speak, slow to anger, for your anger does not produce God's righteousness. So important, isn't it, in a world of instant messaging? It's easy just to give into that temptation to react so quickly when you're confronted with an idea or some kind of provocation with some jerky beefs of your own, right? But Jacobs suggests that when we're tempted to respond quickly like this, we should instead give it 5 minutes. I would say give it 5 minutes for your heart to speak. Let your heart do what it's supposed to do. Let God's Spirit speak. He says, take a walk, make dinner, do some deep breathing. In fact, get out, get moving, do some kind of physical activity. He says when our bodies are moving, our brains have time to process. And I would say our heart has time to filter the words before they come out. He says if that doesn't work, just don't do any instant responses for some nasty or idiotic email, his words, or tweet. He says consider don't responding at all. He said good and wise thinkers focus on thinking and respond about the right things, not everything. Maybe some good word. Number 2, if you have a beef with somebody, be teachable. This makes some sense to me. Jacobs is suggesting that one of the reasons we're so quick to respond to things in this Twitter culture is that we know others are watching. Like I know you watch me. You listen to how I talk to people. You watch the actions. He says, we know folks are watching us, and sometimes we even want to impress our like-minded friend groups. He calls them, some people call it a tribe. He calls it an inner ring. He said, we kind of get good vibes from our inner ring, and so we can, if we tweet to the opposing group something kind of nasty, we're really focusing on the inner group. But he said, when you do that, that's when things can get really caustic. You need to pay attention. He says we can learn from other folks. I like that. Be teachable. Learn from other folks, even the ones who you disagree with. You don't agree with me on everything. I know that. But it doesn't mean we can't learn from one another. Hopefully I've learned some things from you in these past 13 years, or maybe going on 14, and you've learned some things from me. He goes, there's plenty of folks out there fishing. Trolling is the term, especially on social media. All they want to do is stir the pot. What's the famous saying about folks like that? Don't wrestle with pigs. You only end up getting dirty. And what? The pigs love it, right? Pigs love getting dirty. So avoid those who fire off ideas like missiles, and instead he says, seek out the best and fair-minded of the people of whom you disagree. Those are the folks you can have a conversation with. He says, remember, just because they have a different opinion doesn't allow us or give us permission to categorize them as evil. Again, he says, hey, don't forget, we're them. We're broken too. They're not more broken than we are. If you see folks as so evil, he says, you're just basically making up a caricature. And he says that's a poor use of our intellectual and spiritual capital. And I would agree. Finally, last one, and we're out of here. If you have a beef, he says, you need to be honest. Listen to God's Spirit within your heart. And when you do speak, state what you think and believe with conviction. But listen to this. This is the important part. Draw out of the wisdom, the well of God's wisdom and love. Draw up. That's what James says in verse 17. The wisdom from above is first pure, then peaceable, then gentle, willing to yield, full of mercy, full of good fruits, without a trace of partiality or hypocrisy. I love that. When we speak out of that wisdom, James says there's a harvest of righteousness, and it's sown in peace for those who want to make peace. A good word. So, 3 things you can remember, right? Slow down if you have a beef. Be teachable if you have a beef. And be honest if you have a beef. If you can't remember any of those things, I think you might remember this. This is a little boy who's going to give you 10 simple things that you can do today when you leave this place. Okay. You don't have to dance, but you can rise as we sing our closing song, our sending song. Yes, let's do that.